Hello, welcome to the Securing Funding Throughout the Project Life Cycle. My name is Bob Kocher, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm a partner at the venture capital firm Venrock, which invests in all stages of healthcare and technology based in Palo Alto, California. I'm a senior fellow at the USC Schaefer Center and adjunct professor of medicine at Stanford School of Medicine. And I've experienced from starting several companies to investing in them throughout the life cycle, mostly in the healthcare IT and services arena. Today, we will have a really engaging discussion looking at approaches to funding new ideas throughout the entire development cycle, from ideation all the way through commercialization. We have a great set of panelists here today to share their experiences with you. We will have each of them offer some opening remarks, and then we'll move into a facilitated discussion, picking up on the key themes. We invite you to submit your questions in the Slido application, and we will incorporate them as we have the discussion. So please jump in at any point with your questions, and we'll include those. I'm very pleased to introduce our first panelist, Minky Chatterji, Program Officer, and Laura Major, Senior Health Specialist at the National Institutes on Aging at the U.S. National Institutes of Health. So now let's turn it over to Minky and Laura.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's great to be here virtually. Next slide. So today, Laura and I are going to talk about applying for funding from the National Institute on Aging. And like the moderator said, the National Institute on Aging is part of the National Institutes of Health in the US. Next slide. We've organized the talk as follows. We're first going to talk briefly about our backgrounds. Then we'll talk about the National Institute on Aging's research priorities. Next, we'll talk about our participation in the catalyst phase specifically. And then lastly, we'll talk about funding beyond the Healthy Longevity Global Grand Challenge. Next slide. Our backgrounds. Next slide. So as for me, I'm trained as a demographer at UC Berkeley, and I was interested in low and middle income countries from the very beginning of my career. I did my dissertation work in Indonesia on child health. Next slide. And after graduating, I was a AAAS fellow at USAID. And after that, I spent over 15 years in the private sector, actually, at 3 different firms doing research related to USAID projects for the Gates Foundation, the Millennium Challenge Corporation. And I worked in several countries. You can see the pictures here, like in Ghana, in Jordan, Tanzania, Zambia. These are just a sampling of the countries I worked in. And then 5 years ago, I joined the National Institutes of Health. And I was at NICHD and NIDA before I joined the National Institute on Aging just a year ago. Next slide. And Laura's going to briefly talk about herself now. Laura?
Thank you, Minky. So it's great to be here. My name is Laura Major. My training is in public health with a focus on health behavior. So my research examined how movement, specifically physical activity and sedentary behavior, is related to cognitive function. And my interests really are on the role of health behaviors in contributing to healthy aging. So I worked for WestAT for some time on the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, and I've been with NIA for about 6 years, where I manage a portfolio of physical activity intervention grants. Next slide, and I'll pass it back to Minky.
Great. Now I'll talk about NIA's research priorities. Next slide. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, the National Institute on Aging is part of US NIH. And although the National Institute on Aging, most of our funding goes towards projects focused on health in the US, we do also have an international focus. And that's why we chose to get involved in this initiative. And I'm going to talk a little more about that. Next slide. First, I'll talk about our participation in the catalyst phase. Next slide. So we recently issued a call, and Laura Major is actually the contact person, for small research grants for innovations in healthy longevity research. We just issued the call. You can see the research objectives listed here. They're aligned with the larger competition. And for these grants, you can apply for a total of $50,000 a year in direct costs. That's the ceiling for 2 years. And the link is below. Next slide. I think there's a slide missing. Go one slide back. Okay, something got deleted, but I'll just tell you, there's 2 rounds of competitions. One is a deadline coming up in October, and the next one, the competition is in February. And you can find the dates in this link and the timeline. Next slide. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk about beyond this healthy longevity competition, you could also apply to NIA for other types of research grants. And we have a large number of different types of research grants, so many different mechanisms, but I just want to highlight a few. First, we have research project grants, and we have different types, R01, R03, R21. They have slightly different purposes. And for the healthy longevity call, we're asking for an R03. Then we have K grants, which are training and career development grants, and we have them throughout the trajectory of your career from really early stage, even elementary school, high school, literally, and then for really senior people. So that's something to check out. And lastly, of special interest to this group is we do have small business grants, which are particularly appropriate, I think, for the type of innovation that we're talking about during this 2-day meeting. Next slide. So if you get anything out of this presentation at all, I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you. If you want to apply for funding from the National Institute on Aging to do research related to aging and innovation, the first step is to contact Laura and I. Do not go too far down the line before contacting us. And when you contact us, it's ideal if you can submit a 1-page aims page. The better formed your idea is, the more we can help you. And the things that you should include are the study goals, the significance of your grant, what's the problem you're trying to solve, the research question, what study design you plan to use, and who's going to be on your team in 1 page. So you'll see at the end of the presentation, I've included our email addresses, and we really encourage you, if you have ideas, thoughts, please contact us. We really want to move the field ahead and help you do that. Next slide. So throughout my career at National Institutes of Health, I've learned a few things about watching others trying to secure NIH and specifically NIA funding. And I just want to pass those lessons along to you so you can avoid some of those pitfalls. So my first recommendation, which I said before, is contact a program officer as early as possible in the process. For example, if you contact Laura and I, even if we're not the right people, even if eventually we have to refer you to someone else at our institute, we can best help you do that rather than you wasting time and going in the wrong direction. So even if, for example, you have a proposal that's very biomedically focused, and we actually work in the division that focuses more on behavioral and social research, we can link you to the right person. So please, again, contact your program officer, or in this case, us, the 2 of us, as early in the process as you possibly can. Next, you may have a great idea, a really cool idea of something that you want to do. But in your application, you must link your idea to NIA's and the specific division you're applying to, the priorities that they have. If you cannot link your project to those priorities, no matter how great the idea is, you will have a very difficult time getting funded. Another thing which I see a lot is a lot of applications, they have insufficient power. Their sample size is too small to achieve what they're planning to achieve. This is a really common problem. Watch out for this. You can talk to your program officer about this, but again, don't do a trial with 25 people. In most cases, that's not going to fly. And you need to have power calculations. Then focus your aims. Don't be overly ambitious. Don't go too broad. I would really try going really focused from the beginning. And the program officer can help you do that. But a lot of applications, they get rejected because there's an issue with a small sample size and being overly ambitious. Also, you should learn from the experience of others who've successfully obtained NIH grants at your institution. Find other people, find other colleagues, more senior colleagues who've successfully got NIH grants, even if it's not NIA, and ask them for advice. Ask if you can see their application. Because the NIH process is very peculiar. It's not like applying for funding elsewhere. And you really need to talk to other people who've been through it and who are successful. And lastly, this is a very useful tool. An NIH reporter, we have all the grants that we have funded. And if you type in the grant number or even the topic, you can find the abstract and aims. So that is super helpful because you don't want to repeat what someone did before. And when you look at the aims, you can get a sense of what successful grants, what those aims look like. And once you talk to Laura or I or whoever we refer you to, we can even give you grant numbers to put into the website so that you can find these abstracts and aims. So next slide. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your kind attention. We're happy to help you. Here are our email addresses. Please feel free to contact us. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can reach me that way, and then we can continue our discussion via email. And thank you for your attention. Next slide. Thanks. That's it for us. Thank you.
Minky, two clarifying questions. There's a comment about, can you apply for these grants if you reside outside of the US?
Yes, you can. Oh, I so should have mentioned that. That's a great question. Yes, you can. It depends on the grant. It depends on the mechanism. But yes, you can. Again, contact us. I'll tell you more about it. So the answer is a resounding yes.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
I appreciate someone asking that question. I should have mentioned that. Thank you so much.